It started with a mechanical voice over the intercom, flat and final. Flight 1726 to Denver has been canceled due to inclement weather. Please see a gate agent for rebooking. I just stood there. At first, I thought I hadn't heard it right. I blinked up at the screen again. Delayed, canceled. There it was in red, like blood draining from a wound. People around me groaned. Some cursed under their breath. Others immediately scrambled to customer service like it was a fire drill. I didn't move. I didn't feel like running. There was nowhere I needed to be that badly anymore. I pulled my coat tighter. The terminal was already too cold, industrial air conditioning mixing with the chill from the storm outside. Through the huge glass windows, the runway was swallowed in gray. Rain smacked hard against the glass in rhythmic sheets, and the occasional rumble of thunder reminded us this wasn't a quick passing cloud. This was going to last. I checked the airline app. No flights until the morning. Great. I was officially stuck. I didn't have anyone to call. No one was expecting me anymore. Not really. The whole reason for this trip had unraveled a few days ago over a long text and a shorter phone call. It had ended with something like, "I think we're in different places now," whatever that meant. So yeah, I wasn't flying to someone. I was flying away. And now I wasn't flying anywhere at all. I found a seat near gate 27. Not the stiff plastic ones bolted in rows. Those were already occupied by other stranded souls. But one of the leatherish lounge chairs next to a dead phone charging station. I slumped into it and let my bag slide down next to me. The airport started to empty out. Bit by bit, gate by gate. Families with screaming toddlers left. Tired business travelers found hotels. Even the overly cheerful airport staff disappeared behind security doors. The overhead announcements became fewer, the food court lights dimmed, and the once buzzing terminal fell into a quiet lull. Not silent, but emptied, echoey. It was just past midnight now. The vending machine buzzed. Somewhere in the distance, a janitor's cart squeaked. I pulled out my phone and scrolled for the sake of movement. Nothing new. Just photos I didn't want to see, people I didn't want to think about. My feed was full of vacation shots and engagement announcements. Smiles. Arms wrapped around people who looked like they belonged somewhere. Belonged to someone. I didn't even feel jealous. Just numb. I shifted in my seat, adjusting the hoodie I had balled up as a pillow. I was just about to curl up and accept the back pain that would come with sleeping on faux leather when I heard a voice. Low, curious, male. "Is that one of the good seats? Or should I keep walking?" I looked up. He was standing a few feet away, pointing at the identical chair next to mine with a half smile on his face. Late 20s maybe, like me. Wavy dark hair, a small scar near one eyebrow, and a messenger bag slung over one shoulder. He wore a faded hoodie, too soft-looking, like it had been through years of washes. I blinked. I wasn't used to people talking to me. Not casually. Not kindly. "I mean, it's got personality," I said, tapping the armrest. "Squeaks a little. Smells vaguely like old coffee." "That's my type," he grinned, then dropped into the seat beside me. I almost laughed. Almost. He pulled out a packet of almonds from his bag, popped a few in his mouth, then offered it to me without saying anything. I hesitated, then took one. Silence returned. But it wasn't awkward. Not like earlier. He leaned back, stretched his legs out, and exhaled like he'd been running all day. "You stranded too?" "Flight to Denver. Cancelled." He nodded like that explained everything. "Boston. Same story. Got rebooked for morning. No hotels left nearby, unless I want to pay $400 for a bed and a mint on the pillow." I checked too. "I'll take the mintless floor, thanks." He chuckled. "You flying for work?" I shook my head. "Just getting away for a bit." He nodded again, this time more slowly. "Yeah, me too." There was a pause. A shared wait between two strangers. I found myself studying the side of his face. Not in a romantic way, not yet. Just curious. There was something easy about him. He didn't ask too much. He didn't force smiles. He just existed. And somehow, his presence made the terminal feel a little less hollow. He took another handful of almonds and looked out the window. Rain's not letting up anytime soon. Nope. I guess there are worse places to get stuck, he said. Name 3, I muttered. He laughed. And this time I did too, really laughed. The sound echoed a little too loudly in the empty space, and that made us laugh again just to cover it. It wasn't much, but for the first time all night, I didn't feel invisible. He didn't ask if he could sit beside me. He just dropped into the chair with a sigh like we'd known each other for years and the two of us were riding out the storm together. It should have annoyed me, maybe. I'd been doing fine in my bubble of silence and cold coffee. But the strange thing was, it didn't. He stretched his legs out again, ankles crossed, and glanced at me like we were already mid-conversation. So, he said, how bad do you think that airport coffee would taste if I got some right now? Scale of 1 to drinking gasoline. I blinked, caught off guard. If you're lucky, you'll get gasoline with hints of cardboard. He smiled. Leaned back like that was exactly the answer he'd been hoping for. Tempting. I've had worse. Not possible. Trust me. One time I got coffee from a vending machine in Italy. Came out neon brown and fizzy. I still have nightmares. I laughed. Softly, without meaning to. And shook my head. That's not coffee. That's soda in disguise. It betrayed every fiber of my soul, he said, deadpan, then pointed toward the distant cafe window lights. But I might risk it anyway. You're brave. I'm bored. He stood, walked over to the cafe kiosk, and returned with 2 paper cups. He handed one to me before I could argue. I didn't ask for. You looked like you needed it more than I do. I hesitated, then took the cup. It was hot. Real coffee or not, it was warmth. Thanks. You're welcome. I'm Adrian, by the way. I turned slightly in my chair. Noah. Noah, he repeated, like he was trying it out. Good name. Biblical, but not aggressively so. And Adrian sounds like you probably read poetry in high school. I did, he said, grinning. But only to impress a guy who wore Doc Martens and hated everyone. Did it work? He never spoke to me again. I laughed again, this time louder than I meant to. Something about him made it easy. Not because he was charming in a movie kind of way, no pickup lines, no weird flirty energy, just a calmness to how he talked. Like conversation didn't need a destination. We sat like that for a while. The coffee was, as predicted, terrible. We kept drinking it. Why Denver? He asked at one point after a lull. I hesitated. Just needed to go somewhere. Somewhere not here. Fair, he said. Sometimes anywhere else is good enough. I didn't ask about his reason yet. Felt too soon. But he didn't seem to mind the pause. Instead, he told me about a trip he once took to Mexico where he missed his connecting flight because he got distracted by a chow cart. I stood there, covered in sugar, just watching the plane back away from the gate like it was leaving me on purpose. You deserved it, I said, sipping the coffee. Food over punctuality is always the right choice. He nodded. Exactly what I told myself as I slept on a bench for 6 hours. The more we talked, the more I found myself leaning in. Not physically, but emotionally. I'd been closed up for so long, I didn't realize how nice it felt to just talk to someone who wasn't trying to fix me or pry something open. He asked about the worst hotel I ever stayed in. I told him about the time I accidentally booked a shared dorm room in Madrid during peak tourist season and got stuck with a group of college backpackers who played loud EDM until 4 a.m. Brutal, he said. They asked if I wanted to join. I pretended I had food poisoning so I wouldn't sound lame. You are so lame. I mock glared at him. You drank fizzy coffee in Italy. You don't get to judge me. The airport buzzed faintly around us. Cleaning crews moving slowly through the halls. A tired security guard yawning near the checkpoint. But here, in this little corner of the terminal, it felt separate. Quiet, but not empty. I hadn't realized how long we'd been talking until I glanced at my phone. Wow, I muttered. It's almost 2 a.m. Time doesn't exist in airports, Adrian said, stretching his arms behind his head. We're all just ghosts waiting for boarding calls. You're poetic again. I warned you. He smiled, and I looked at him, really looked. His eyes were tired but kind. A soft hazel under the flickering overhead lights. There was a faint scruff on his jaw, like he hadn't shaved in a couple days. I noticed the way he tapped his thumb on the coffee cup when he was thinking. The kind of small habit people don't usually realize they have. He caught me staring and raised an eyebrow. "What?" "Nothing," I said quickly, looking away. "Just thinking. About." I hesitated. How weird it is to feel less alone when nothing in your life has changed. He didn't answer right away. Then, softly, "Maybe something did." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just sipped the last of the cold coffee and let the silence sit between us again. This time, full and warm. "Wanna walk?" Adrian asked, stretching his legs and standing with a slight groan like he was 60 instead of late 20s. I blinked up at him, a little surprised. "Walk, where?" He shrugged, tossed his empty cup into the nearby bin.
Gate B.
"Or Z, or wherever our legs take us. I'm too wired to sleep and too tired to keep sitting." I hesitated for half a second, then stood. My knees popped. That felt unfair. I was too young for my body to already sound like bubble wrap. We walked in no particular direction, just side by side down the long, silent corridor. The fluorescent lights above buzzed faintly, and the airport, already hushed, now felt almost sacred in its emptiness. Stores were closed, chairs abandoned in rows like little islands of waiting. "You ever notice how airports feel like nowhere?" he said. "Like they're designed to erase time?" I glanced around. "Yeah, time and dignity." He laughed. "Don't forget sleep schedules and personal boundaries." We passed a decorative waterfall no one seemed to notice during the day. Now, its quiet gurgle echoed like a meditation track. Adrian slowed near it, trailing a finger along the glass divider as we walked. "You ever feel like you're running from something, even when you're just trying to leave?" he asked. The question came out casual, but it wasn't. It landed deeper than it had any right to. I didn't answer right away. He didn't press. We ended up near gate B16. The lights were dimmer there, like someone had forgotten to keep them fully on. I sat on the floor by the giant window that overlooked the runway, and Adrian dropped beside me, our shoulders just a few inches apart. Outside, a lonely baggage cart trundled along under the floodlights, leaving faint tracks on the rain-slicked tarmac. He waited. Then softly, "You said earlier you were flying to get away. Want to tell me what from?" I inhaled. The air smelled like janitor soap and old pretzels. "I was supposed to visit someone," I said. "We were together. Long distance. Met online during the pandemic. Spent 2 years making plans. Talking every night like we were already married." He stayed quiet, eyes on me. "We finally set a date to meet. I bought the ticket. We picked out a little Airbnb near his town. He broke it off 3 days ago. Said he wasn't sure anymore. That he needed time to think." Adrian didn't move. I was gonna cancel the flight, but I didn't. I thought maybe I'd go anyway. Sit by the ocean. Get sunburned. Prove something to myself. "You're still proving it," he said quietly. "Yeah." I let out a hollow laugh. Because nothing says healing like sleeping on cold vinyl and drinking burnt coffee at 2 a.m. in a terminal full of broken dreams. That should be on a t-shirt. I looked at him, and he gave me the smallest smile. Not mocking, not pitying. Just present. "Have you ever—" I paused. "I don't know. Been that stupid for someone?" "Yeah," he said.
No hesitaschen.
"I came out to my dad for a guy who ghosted me 2 months later." I turned my head sharply. "Seriously?" "Dead serious," he said. Said the words. Got a half hug and a long silence in return. Went home. Texted the guy I'd done it for. And nothing. No response. Ever. I stared at him, unsure whether to feel sad or furious on his behalf. "What did you do?" I cried. Then ate an entire pizza. Then cried again. "That's a better strategy than mine." "What's yours?" "Repression, mostly. And mild sarcasm." He bumped my knee with his lightly. "Could be worse." We both leaned our heads back against the glass. Above us, the ceiling lights flickered just once. A sign somewhere buzzed quietly. Everything else was still. "You ever wonder," I said, If we're all just orbiting other people? Hoping someone's gravity is strong enough to keep us close. Adrian didn't answer right away. When he did, it was soft. Yeah, I think I used to want someone to pull me in. Now I just want someone who chooses to stay. That hit me in the chest. We sat like that for a while, not talking, not needing to. The kind of silence that doesn't demand anything. The kind that lets your breath slow down, your shoulders relax. The kind you don't get with strangers. Only, maybe he wasn't a stranger anymore. The runway lights blinked in rhythmic patterns beyond the glass. Somewhere in the distance, a plane took off, just a shadow in the rain. I turned my head to look at him, and he was already watching me. What? I asked. He shook his head. Nothing. Just, you've got that look like you're remembering how to breathe. I didn't reply, because I was. Around 2 a.m., my stomach betrayed me with a loud, grumbling growl. I winced. Adrian turned his head, clearly trying not to laugh. You've been quiet for 5 minutes, he said. I thought it was because of my deep, emotionally resonant story. Turns out, it's just your stomach staging a protest. I nudged him lightly. It's making its own decisions now. I've lost all control. Well, lucky for you. I saw one sad little cafe still open near the escalators. I vote we raid it. I'm good, I said automatically, even as my body argued otherwise. He was already standing. That wasn't a question. Adrian, look, no one should feel alone on a night like this, especially not on an empty stomach. Come on. There was something about the way he said it, gentle, firm, like he wasn't trying to fix anything. Just make the moment suck less. So I followed him. The cafe was more of a kiosk than a shop. Just one sleepy worker behind the counter, scrolling through her phone with the expression of someone who'd long given up on caring. The food options were tragic at best. A few cold sandwiches in plastic wrap, overly sugared pastries, bottled drinks sweating in a mini fridge. Adrian picked out 2 turkey and Swiss sandwiches and a bottle of iced tea. This, he declared, is gourmet desperation. He paid before I could argue. We sat at a wobbly little table near the edge of the food court, under fluorescent lights that hummed with the same tired energy we both had. Adrian handed me a sandwich like it was some kind of peace offering. I took it with a quiet nod. So, he said, unwrapping his. What did you want to be when you were a kid? I blinked. Random. Answer the question. I bit into the sandwich, not great, not terrible, and thought for a second. A weather guy. He looked at me. Like, on TV? Yeah. Why? I liked the idea of knowing what was coming. Standing in front of a green screen and telling people, don't worry, the storm will pass. I think I wanted to believe someone could actually promise that. He didn't laugh, just chewed quietly, then nodded. That's actually kind of beautiful. I glanced down at the sad sandwich in my hand. And yet here I am, still getting caught in storms. Not your fault. Weather people lie all the time. I smiled. What about you? I asked. What was the dream? He leaned back a little. I wanted to be a musician. Piano, actually. You still play? Not as much as I should, he said. Not since I moved out. Moved out? He exhaled. Family stuff. Complicated. We don't really talk. I nodded. Same. I mean, my parents are still around. But we're in different solar systems now. They didn't take the whole me being gay thing with fireworks and applause. He looked at me. I'm sorry. It's all right, I said. You get used to the quiet. You even start calling it peace. Until nights like this, he added. Yeah, I said. Until nights like this. We ate in silence for a bit, letting the conversation settle. There was something grounding about chewing next to someone without needing to fill every second with words. Then I looked up and asked, You never told me. Why are you stuck here tonight? He wiped his hands with a napkin, looked away for a moment. My flight wasn't canceled. I raised an eyebrow. So, I just didn't get on it. I paused. You mean you missed it on purpose? Yeah. He didn't elaborate, so I waited. Finally, he said, I was supposed to fly to Chicago. My ex is there. He invited me to this, I don't know, closure dinner. Said he wanted to talk, maybe even start fresh. I packed, bought the ticket, checked in. Then I got to the gate and couldn't do it. I watched him closely. Why? He shrugged. Because I think part of me already knows how that story ends. There was a beat of quiet between us. Then, I said, you ever wonder why we're so good at ignoring the parts of us that are already screaming no? All the time. We sat there for a few more minutes, the cafe lights buzzing gently above us. A TV mounted in the corner started playing a classic black and white movie. No sound, just subtitles. Two characters ran through an airport terminal, chasing each other in slow motion. Adrian glanced over and pointed. Wow, we're just a musical montage away from becoming a cliché. I grinned. Speak for yourself. I'm still in the brooding loner phase. He leaned back in his chair, eyes on the screen. You pull it off. I felt myself blush, then looked away. Not embarrassed, just disarmed. He didn't press. We watched the old movie play out in silence, the glow from the screen softening the shadows around us. Our shoulders brushed once. Accidental, maybe, but neither of us moved. It was quiet. It was enough. We found our way back to Gate B16 sometime after 3 a.m., carrying what was left of the sandwiches and that odd, sacred kind of calm that comes only after sharing things you didn't mean to say but needed someone to hear. The window overlooked the same rain-soaked runway, still streaked with reflected light. Outside, dawn was nowhere near. The world felt like it had pressed pause. Adrian stretched his arms behind his head and settled into the floor like he'd done this a dozen times before. I lay beside him, not quite touching, but close enough that I could hear the way his breath deepened as the minutes passed. For a while, we both just watched the windows, watched the foggy distance where planes had disappeared into the night, and I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Stillness. Not silence from being alone. Not the aching quiet of absence, but a stillness that made room for me. For both of us. I must have dozed off. I remember the sound of the terminal more than anything, how it slowly returned. First a distant vacuum hum, then footsteps, then the voice over the intercom, sharp and sudden. Good morning, passengers. Flight 273 to Boston is now boarding at Gate A14. I blinked my eyes open. Adrian was still beside me. One arm curled under his head, the other flopped over his stomach. His mouth was slightly open, and his face was soft with sleep. He looked younger like that, softer. Then he stirred. His eyes fluttered open, met mine, and he gave a crooked smile. Morning already? Unfortunately. He sat up, rubbing at his eyes. I was hoping that whole thing was a weird dream. What thing? He glanced around. The sandwiches. The cafe. You. I raised an eyebrow. Charming. He grinned and stood, stretching like a cat. Any word on your flight? I checked my phone. Gate change. New departure in an hour. Where? C9. Other end of the world. He checked his too. I'm A14. Opposite direction. Of course. We stood there for a moment, still facing the windows, neither of us quite ready to say what came next. The airport was busier now, not crowded, but awake. Flight crews passed by with sleepy smiles. Travelers tugged rolling suitcases behind them. The night had ended while we weren't looking. Guess this is it, huh? I said, voice quieter than I meant. He turned toward me, that familiar softness back in his eyes. Unless you want company walking to your gate. I blinked. You'd do that. He shrugged. You gave me someone to talk to when I needed it. Least I can do. I picked up my bag, slung it over my shoulder. All right, just don't walk too close. I have a mysterious loner reputation to protect. He fell into step beside me. Too late for that. You told me about your childhood dream and your failed long-distance heartbreak. You're basically a rom-com protagonist at this point. We made our way down the long stretch of Terminal Hall, past sleepy kiosks opening for the day, past security officers leaning on rails with coffee cups in hand. Neither of us talked much. It was a different kind of silence, not awkward, but heavy in the way it tried to hold the night a little longer. As we neared gate C9, I slowed down. The boarding area was starting to fill. A few announcements were blaring overhead, but I couldn't really hear them over the sudden thud of my own heartbeat. Adrian stopped with me. "This is you." I nodded. There was a long pause. We just stood there, facing each other, both of us unsure of what this moment was supposed to be. A goodbye? A thank you? A polite nod and wave? I started but stopped. He stepped just a little closer, not enough to crowd, but enough that I could smell the faint citrus of his shampoo. "No pressure," he said. "But if this wasn't just a weird night to you, I'd like to talk again. See you again." I exhaled, surprised by the emotion catching in my throat. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a pen, of all things, and took my boarding pass from my hand like it was nothing. With a scribble, he wrote something across the bottom corner, then handed it back. I looked down. Adrian. 617 hashtag 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 dash hashtag 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 hashtag. If you ever need another midnight sandwich. My hand tightened slightly around it. "You're kind of hard to forget," I said. He smiled. "So are you." The boarding announcement called my group number. A line began to form. I should. Yeah. Another beat. The kind that hurts a little. He raised a hand, gave me the softest wave. I turned, walked a few steps, then stopped and glanced back. He was still standing there, watching me. No expectations, no demands, just watching, like the whole night was still echoing between us. I didn't wave, but I smiled, and he nodded like he understood. I boarded the plane, found my seat, and sank into it. As the engines hummed to life and the runway pulled into view again, I looked down at the boarding pass in my hand. The ink was already smudging a little. I didn't care. I wasn't going to lose it. The plane climbed into the sky, tearing through layers of gray and cloud, and I sat by the window with my tray table down, staring at a single corner of paper like it held all the answers to the questions I hadn't dared ask. My boarding pass, still warm from the inside of my palm, folded, slightly creased, and now marked with handwriting that was just messy enough to be real. Adrian. 617 hashtag 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 dash hashtag 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 hashtag. If you ever want another midnight sandwich. I must have read it a dozen times during the flight. Not because I didn't believe it was real, but because I needed it to be. Around me, people flipped through magazines, dozed off, or stared blankly at seatback screens. But all I could do was replay it in my mind. That moment at the gate. His eyes. The way he smiled but didn't make it heavy.
No promises.
No pressure. Just a chance. If I wanted it. It felt fragile. Like the whole night could disappear the moment I landed. I wasn't used to soft things staying. Still, I folded the boarding pass and tucked it into the inside pocket of my jacket, close to my chest like it might matter more that way. After landing, the world did what it always does. It moved on. Emails flooded in. The airport bathroom was out of order. My rideshare driver was late and had snacks in the back seat but wouldn't stop talking. The city looked the same, the weather was worse, and my apartment had that stale, closed-up smell that reminded me I didn't actually live a movie. I tossed my bag on the floor, peeled off my shoes, and stood in the middle of the living room. Empty again. Quiet again. Except it wasn't. Not entirely. Because he was still there in my head. In the in-between moments. When I passed a coffee shop. When I scrolled through my phone late at night and stopped before opening his contact. When I saw something funny and thought, Adrian would have laughed at that. I didn't text him. Not right away. I wanted to. God, I wanted to. Every day I stared at that folded piece of paper. Sometimes I take it out, trace the ink with my thumb like it might rub clarity into my spine. But I didn't want to be the one who expected too much. I didn't want to be the guy who turned a few hours of shared silence and vending machine food into something it wasn't. But I also didn't want to be the guy who let something real pass him by. Again. So, 7 days later at 9:14 p.m., I finally typed out a message. Me, hey, I found a place with better sandwiches. But the company was way worse. I hovered over the send button for nearly 5 minutes. My thumb trembled. My heart did this weird fluttery thing that felt both too big and too familiar. Then I hit send. The second it left my phone, I regretted it. It was dumb. Too late. He'd forgotten. Or worse, remembered and didn't care. I stared at the screen for 10 minutes. Then 15. I got up, poured a glass of water, sat back down, unlocked my phone again. Nothing. I sighed, slid it into my pocket, and walked to the kitchen. It buzzed before I got there. I nearly dropped the glass. Adrian. Took you long enough. Just that. Nothing else. But I swear I could hear him saying it. That smirk in his voice, that quiet softness underneath. I stared at the message for a full minute, then grinned like a complete idiot in the middle of my kitchen. I typed back, me. I had to wait 7 days to seem mysterious. Adrian, you failed. Miserably. Me, I'm okay with that. A pause. Then, Adrian, you free Friday? I know a place that doesn't serve cardboard coffee. My stomach did this stupid little flip, and I leaned against the counter, grinning like a fool. Me, only if the sandwiches are at least slightly less depressing. Adrian, I'll make sure they cry a little less when you bite into them. I laughed, out loud, alone, and for the first time in a long time, the silence in my apartment didn't feel like a void. Felt like a beginning. We agreed to meet in a city that didn't belong to either of us, halfway between where I lived and where he didn't want to return. Neutral ground. No baggage claims.
No overhead announcements.
Just a cafe on the corner of a side street with soft yellow lighting and old jazz humming through ceiling speakers. The kind of place with chipped mugs and wooden chairs that wobble slightly but never fall apart. I got there first. Nervous didn't even begin to cover it. I changed my shirt twice, stood in front of the mirror trying to decide whether to look like I wasn't trying or like I cared just enough. I settled for something in between. When I walked in, I half expected him not to be there yet, or worse, to already be sitting with someone else and wave me off with a friendly smile like the whole thing had just been a layover fantasy. But the seat across from me stayed empty. Until it didn't. I looked up and there he was, Adrian, in jeans and a button-up rolled to his elbows, with the same tired warmth in his eyes and a fresh haircut that somehow made him look a little more like himself. Or maybe I was just seeing him more clearly now, in daylight. He smiled like he wasn't sure he should, and I smiled back like I didn't know what else to do. Hey, he said, sliding into the chair across from me. Hey, I echoed. It was quiet. Not in the comfortable way it had been at the airport. Not yet. This was real life. No storm outside. No canceled flights. No overnight silence to fold ourselves into. How was the trip? He asked. Uneventful, I said. Train was on time. No vending machine disasters. That's disappointing. I know. I almost bought a warm soda just for the nostalgia. That made him laugh, and it loosened something in my chest. We ordered coffee and pastries and made the kind of small talk that people make when they're still trying to match the people they felt with the people they're seeing. It was a little stilted at first, like we were both waiting for the terminal magic to show up again. But it didn't, not right away, because this wasn't the same place, and we weren't the same people in it. And that was okay. Eventually, we found our rhythm. Adrian told me about the small studio apartment he was renting now, with a window that faced a brick wall and a neighbor who played trumpet badly but passionately. I told him about my job, about the latest weird request from my manager, about how I still hadn't unpacked my carry-on from the trip. As I spoke, he rested his chin on his hand, watching me like I was more interesting than I actually was. The coffee went cold. The sky outside shifted from gray to soft blue. And when he suggested we take a walk, I didn't even think before nodding. We wandered through quiet streets without purpose, past bookstores with tilted displays and flower carts just beginning to open. We didn't hold hands. We didn't talk about what this was or what it might be, but the space between us felt intentional, like we were choosing to keep it close. At one point, we passed a mural on a brick wall. It was of a girl holding a paper plane, the sky behind her blooming in swirls of pink and gold. Adrian stopped, tilted his head. You think she's sending that plane somewhere? Or just watching it go? Depends, I said, on whether she believes in return flights. He looked at me then, really looked, and I felt it all over again. That ease, that strange safety he carried like second nature. "I don't think she wants it back," he said. "I think she just wants to know it landed somewhere good." We kept walking. He didn't ask about the future. Neither did I. There was no need. The whole point of this, of us, whatever this was, didn't live in promises. It lived in choices. Small, deliberate ones. Like answering a message after a week. Like meeting in a city with nothing familiar but each other's names. Like walking slowly instead of rushing ahead. We ended the day on a park bench with fading light and quiet laughter about the worst TV shows we'd both secretly loved as kids. Adrian pulled a small candy bar from his jacket pocket. "Emergency sugar," he called it, and broke it in half without asking. I took the piece like it was a ritual. And in that moment, chewing bad chocolate beside a boy I barely knew and somehow already trusted, I realized it. This wasn't leftover airport magic. It wasn't a one-night spark stretched too thin. It was a beginning. The slow kind. The steady kind. The kind that starts when you show up. Not just once, not just by chance, but again and again and again. Airports always smell the same. A weird mix of floor polish, coffee grounds, and something faintly metallic in the air. That never changes, no matter how many times you leave or arrive. But this time it was different. I wasn't running from anything. I wasn't searching for an escape or clutching a ticket with nowhere to go. I was landing, returning. For once, the journey didn't feel like an attempt to outrun a feeling. It felt like a step towards something I wanted. The flight had landed early. The terminal was just waking up. I wheeled my carry-on through the same dull halls, passing glowing advertisements, familiar signs. My reflection ghosted across every window. Quieter now. Older, maybe, or just more settled. The escalator hummed under my feet, and for a second, I felt my heart knock a little harder against my chest. Stupid, really. We'd seen each other plenty of times since that cafe. There'd been walks and late-night video calls and texts that stretched until morning. But this was different. This felt like something we'd circled back to, full orbit. And then I saw him, leaning against the wall just past the arrival gate, hands in his pockets, looking exactly the same and not at all. His hair was a little longer. His jacket was new. But the warmth was the same. That quiet calm in his eyes, like he was always a step ahead but never in a hurry. He was holding 2 coffees. Of course he was. He spotted me and smiled. Not big. Not dramatic. Just that small, lopsided smile that somehow made the airport feel like the most human place in the world. I walked toward him, slower than I meant to. Not because I was nervous, but because I wanted to remember the feeling of moving toward someone who was waiting just for me. "Hey," he said, handing me one of the cups. "You look better than you did the last time I saw you walk through an airport." "I'm wearing clean clothes and I slept in a bed. So yeah," I said, grinning. We stood there for a moment, just standing. People passed on either side of us. Families reuniting, business travelers hurrying, babies crying in strollers. But everything outside our little circle felt muffled. He tilted his head. "Want to sit for a bit?" I nodded. We found a bench tucked near Gate A. A quiet spot with a view of the runway, just like the one from that first night. The coffee warmed my hands. My heart hadn't quite caught up yet. "You nervous?" he asked, teasing lightly. "A little," I admitted. "Feels like we've been circling the runway for a while. Good thing I'm a patient guy." I turned toward him, and for a moment, the noise of the terminal faded away completely. And in my head, uninvited, unforced, the memory played itself back. That first night, the empty terminal, his voice beside me, the laugh I didn't expect to give, the moment we watched old movie clips together like time had folded around us, the sandwich, the number on the boarding pass, the parting glance that hurt more than it should have. And the message I almost didn't send. He was a stranger once. Now he was my favorite kind of familiar. I didn't say anything. I just reached over, fingers brushing lightly against his where his hand rested on the bench. He looked down, smiled softly, and turned his palm to meet mine. It was quiet, simple, no declarations, no theatrics, just showing up. Again. After a few minutes, he leaned his head slightly against mine. You know, he said, this gate's not even yours. I looked up at the sign above us, Gate A7. Doesn't matter, I said. You are. He closed his eyes, that small smile returning again. Okay, poet. That one was good. I've been practicing. We sat like that for a while. Two guys in a noisy airport, drinking mediocre coffee, not in any rush to go anywhere. The kind of moment you don't post about. The kind that just stays with you. And when we finally stood, my bag rolling behind us, his hand brushing mine now and then, he paused before the doors. I turned to him. He didn't say anything. Instead, he wrapped his arms around me. Not tightly, not urgently. Just completely. Like he meant it. Like he'd been waiting, not just for me to land, but for this moment. And I let myself lean into it, fully. It wasn't about arrival or departure anymore. It was about being met. About being chosen not just once, but again and again. And as I rested my chin on his shoulder, I realized the final, quiet truth. That night, I thought I was alone in the world. But turns out the world had someone waiting, right next to Gate A. What did you think of their quiet airport love story? Have you ever met someone unexpectedly? Someone who made a layover feel like destiny? Tell us your favorite stranger who stayed moment in the comments. Like, subscribe and share if the story made you believe in second chances. Because sometimes, the real destination isn't on your boarding pass.